great discussion, guys. It's time to move to our last segment, which is about history and woo-woo. And I got a little bit for both of them. I know we talked a lot about currency, but did you guys ever know that we had a currency in the United States that was backed by silver, that was paper? Were you aware of that?
Yes, I was. I think I have a silver certificate somewhere.
Yes. So I have an image of one here, and let me share it. It's right here. So this is from, let me see what year it's like 1953. So if you look closely, it says silver certificate right at the top. So you could actually exchange this for silver. So silver on demand. So this was one of the reasons that in the 60s, when a certain president, so this happened in the 50s and 60s, and a certain president in the 60s, JFK, wanted to get rid of or take more control away from the Federal Reserve because he heard about the military complex that Eisenhower, the industrial complex of the military that he talked about in a famous speech. Well, Kennedy was trying to move away from the Federal Reserve and saw how big of that problem that was, and go back to a silver standard and a precious metal standard. This was it. Now, keep in mind, this is 1963. So in 1963, Kennedy, it was, I think, let me check the year, the month. It might have been June. So let me share one more time. We got June. Whoops. So there we go. So we got Executive Order 11110. And I don't know how far or what, I don't know where the numbers started with the executive orders. I'd be curious if you know, please leave a comment down below and like and share. And I like cool stuff, and we really appreciate you watching. But Executive Order 11110 was about taking power away from the Federal Reserve and giving it more to the Treasury, so that the Treasury could issue silver-backed currency notes. So
the first executive order was issued by Washington on June 8th, 1789, and addressed to the heads of the federal department. It instructed them to impress me with a full and precise, distinct general idea of affairs of the United States.
Interesting. Did they number it back then?
Yeah, Executive Order 1 was June 8th.
So I don't think we've ever.
Yeah, that was number one.
11,000 orders? That's crazy. Okay. Well, in any event, there's even here on Wikipedia, this talks about the same year, 1963, and I know this date because my birth date is the day before. It's November 22nd, 1963 in Dallas, Texas. No, I wasn't born in 63. But November 22nd was the day that Kennedy was shot in Dallas. And there's so many conspiracy theories about this. But one of them is that the CIA was involved. That's a common theory. But one of the motivations for it was the fact that Kennedy was trying to get the country back to a precious metal standard. Mm-hmm. And he was trying to move.
Came up with the term conspiracy theory, Jeff?
That's correct. The CIA actually created that term. You're correct. Yeah. So
I just learned that last week. I'm so impressed, just so you guys know.
Good job, Patrick. Way to put that into the conversation. I'm proud of you. So here we were in the 60s. So picture the 60s. We got a Cuban Missile Crisis. There's people worried about another world war, but Kennedy's attacking the financial system. Meanwhile, Kissinger and other aspects of the CIA, if you haven't read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, check it out or listen to it. It talks about how the U.S. was trying to push the influence of the dollar to other countries to get them to use the dollar and expand the need for dollars around the planet, because other countries like France were trying to get their gold back from the U.S. So 8 years after the assassination is when Nixon took us off of the gold standard. So there was this is a 10-year period of a currency war that was part of a global dynamic of a president being assassinated, several other presidents being installed, and a president stepping down with Nixon, and the petrodollar being launched. There's a lot going on. Kind of what's happened. Not as bad as today. I think today is way more information, but you get the idea that this has happened before. And they have taken, if you believe in the conspiracy, they have taken action on it. So, and this is going to lead me to my second and final story for today, which is a little bit more woo-woo. And Patrick, please get this video ready if you could. But this is kind of like, have you ever heard the term fossil fuels?
Wait,
Dylan,
Jeff,
you've heard that, right?
Can I point out something real quick?
Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah. So can you pull up that silver note again?
Note?
Yeah.
Yeah, here you go.
So look at that. That looks familiar, right?
Looks very familiar.
But the $5 bill that we have today, even though it looks very, very similar to that, obviously represents something completely different. And so we've talked about CBDCs a lot. And so that's something to keep in mind is it'd be silly for them to potentially change what you're used to, even though they change the function and what it actually represents. So this looks exactly like basically like a $5 bill today. A lot of people would have this in their wallet. They would see Lincoln, they would see a 5 and they'd spend it just like it was $5 bill, not knowing that what did you say, silver's worth like $23 or so an ounce.
Yeah, but you can't get silver for them anymore, so it's still only worth $5.
I know.
Paper price, yeah.
But that it represents over $100 worth of today's value. But people would just spend it like a $5 bill, not even knowing the difference. So there's something to think about when the CBDCs come out, that they may not look different. And they may not necessarily feel completely different. They might be represented by symbols and characters that you have this innate trust in. Just something to keep in mind.
That's a great point, because if you go back again in the 60s, 1964 is the last year that we had 90% silver coins and dimes and quarters, and half dollars lasted a few more years, but they went to tin and zinc and alloys after that. So again, they were taking the precious metals out of the currency system. So you're right, they will make it just like, but the thing I think about now is that most people transact with Zelle, Venmo, electronic transactions, over 90%. So to make a digital dollar in some form is people will accept it, but they won't know the nuance of change that's being implemented that impacts their freedom and their liberty. That's what our job is, to educate them about. Exactly. So the last story to educate about today, and to go into the woo-woo part, let me go here, and we're going to talk about, well, Patrick's got the video ready. So this is the history of fossil fuel. So the term fossil fuel was actually coined over 100 years ago. And it's actually a fake science. And I'll put this link in the description. But basically, I think it was, Colonel Fletcher explained how Rockefeller coined the term fossil fuel in 1892. There was this big conference that they had about carbon. Imagine that, about living things. And somehow, because there was a tie between oil and carbon, they got them to somebody as an expert to talk about that they could say oil is petroleum is a fossil fuel, and therefore will become scarce over time. And that's what was coined in 1892. And the video that we're about to share here, this is Patrick. Go ahead and play it.
World price. That's their goal, and they're trying to do that for wheat and everything else. We don't realize what the controls are, whether it's oil or some of these other things. Almost everything today is being categorized at the highest price they can possibly make it go. And so calling petroleum a fossil fuel is the basis for this system with respect to petroleum. And I don't know if the name Arthur Kantrowitz rings any bell. Arthur Kantrowitz is the head of the Kantrowitz Labs, set up by the AVCO company near Boston, scientific laboratories, and a great man in the scientific world. And Kantrowitz and I were sitting at a table at this seminar once, and the table happened to be all young college grad, PhD geologists. And so just to get a conversation started, I turned to Kantrowitz and I said, Arthur, what do you think about this foolishness of these speakers talking about fossil fuel? And it was kind of put up. He started laughing. He said, that gets me. He says, I don't have a geology degree, but he had 1,000 other degrees. And he said, I don't understand. He said, you'd think that these other fellows at the table, we did it on purpose, start listening, And he said, are you gentlemen? He says, you're here at the meeting. Are you gentlemen by any chance geologists? And one fellow, yes, I am. And the other, yeah. He said, well, why don't you tell me? He said, why is oil? And he went on like that. We brought the house down because nobody could argue with Kantrowitz. He like Einstein. People aren't going to. And he told them right there. He said, just drop it. But it's in all the books, in all the papers. But it started from that strange meeting in 1892, a scientific convention. I have a big, thick scientific encyclopedia put out by the Divan Ostrin Company that's about 15 years old now, but it has the whole story of the conference. It doesn't have the Rockefeller part, but it has the whole story of how they straightened out organic chemicals and how it was all figured, and they've got petroleum right in there.
Amazing.
So these aren't accidental things, you see. There's a dollar sign behind almost everything.
Yeah, and that speaker right there, thanks, Patrick. That speaker right there, if you look closely, that's actually Colonel Fletcher Prudy, who's mentioned in this article. So I actually found that video of him speaking on that topic and where fossil fuels came from. So Rockefeller got that term coined in 1892, which led to petroleum and the huge amount of wealth that Rockefeller was able to obtain through controlling oil supply, and everybody thought it was scarce because it was a fossil fuel. So that's really in bucket one, Patrick. So don't even, we're not going to go too far into that, but I just wanted everybody to know that fossil fuels is you should laugh at the term.
I mean, I don't really care what they call it. I need it to get to work. So
well, the falsehood is that
don't need it.
The falsehood is that it's scarce, and that there's many people that believe that the earth makes it's a question of how petroleum is made. But there's a book I just purchased. I don't remember what it was, but I'll have to read it and get back to you guys on it. But as I was doing my homework on this, there was a book there that said you got to read this about how petroleum is really made or it's generated. It's really interesting. But to create this false scarcity really created a ton of wealth for the Rockefellers. So that's a little bit of woo in history for today. This was a longer episode for sure, but this was a great discussion, guys. If we had a guest, it'd probably be over 2 hours. Dylan, what do you got to say?
One other thing that I think is interesting that he said is create a one world price for all these things. So it's one price for oil, for wheat, for these core commodities, things that we need to live and thrive on this planet. If there's one price, that means it's denominated by one thing. And if you control the thing that all things are priced in, right, you have captured all that demand. And if you can manipulate that thing, you then have control over all the things that you need for the society to function, right? You are the hand that feeds everyone, and they must, listen to you or else.
So there's Dylan's campaign slogan for
dollar.
Yeah, Dylan just said he wants to be president of the Federal Reserve. That's his campaign slogan right there. He figured it all out. It's exactly what the whole point of the dollar is at this point, the last 50 years. And that's why, again, Confessions of an Economic Hitman was about pushing the dollar into the rest of the world.